Good evening and welcome to a special episode of Occupation Breakdown. We've got two special guests with us today. We've got Lolly and Emily Phillips, who has just recently had a run-in with the law here at the city's church on Easter Sunday. So before we kind of get into the situation of how all that went down, I just want to kind of address something. Is there any reason why you chose that particular church on Sunday, or do you just hate Christianity?
um, so there is absolutely a reason. Some of the people out there with me and many of the righteous 39 that protested the church before me are Christians. They're just the kind of Christians that the love thy neighbor part really sank in. The being around the lowliest of us all really sank into them. They care about their community and doing what's right for the people around them, regardless of whatever judgments they may end up making about them, because aren't we not supposed to judge people? So I definitely don't hate Christianity, but I hate hypocrisy. And this church, City's Church, is full of hypocrites, starting with David Easterwood, who was the ice field director throughout Operation Metro Surge. As far as I'm aware, he's still the ice field director. And Jonathan Parnell, who founded the church, as far as I'm aware, and wrote a book about how empathy is bad. Right. And they recently have actually not allowed a black man to come in and worship with them because they said he looked too much like a protester, and they offered to come pray with him outside in the cold, but they would not allow him in.
Yikes. Yikes. I did not hear about that one. So I guess to give people a little bit of a background on the actual church there, obviously you talked about the David Easterwood as the ICE director there, the book that you were referring to, but what's the history behind this church? Not just only them, but with actual activities and stuff going on there. As far as the other big arrests that happened, do you kind of want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah. I mean, the Righteous 39 are the reason I became aware of David Easterwood as the ice field director and pastor of this church. And I have been lucky enough to become friends with many of the people who are defendants on the case.
Hmm.
And I have great respect for all of them because they went in, they sat, they worshiped, because as I said earlier, many of them are Christians themselves. And then Nikema Levy Armstrong got up and she asked the preacher some questions. And he didn't engage in them in good faith. Instead, he started saying shame. And at that point, I believe they started chanting. But Jesus flipped tables. They didn't even go as far as Jesus did. So if people want to look at them and say bad things about them and call them unchristian or these tactics an attack on faith, you only have to look to the Bible, which is the book these people are supposed to be following, to find where Jesus himself acted more rashly than any of us have. And the defendants in the Righteous 39 are still going through their legal process. Many of them had extraneous um, um, extraneous restrictions put on them. But as far as I'm aware, most of them have gotten their passports back and their guns back if they were taken and things like that, because there was really no reason to do that in the first place
Hmm.
over a peaceful protest. So we need to show up and keep supporting them because they're really on the front lines now. At this point, my charges have been dismissed, but Fox 9 and Bring Me the News and probably other outlets have reported that they didn't include notes on probable cause, and the prosecutor did come out and say that they could refile the charges, and it's not uncommon for them to do. So they are still threatening to charge me again with this, but um, mine will probably end up being a fine if that's what it comes to. These other people, the Righteous 39, they are facing years in federal prison over exercising their free speech.
So as far as the actual day on Sunday, obviously you were arrested because of this situation. As I look online, background, I haven't actually met you in person before. I just reached out, once I saw that this situation happened. And I think you were still incarcerated when I sent a message to you and received something back quickly after. So, I appreciate that. I haven't actually met you before, but when I looked you up online, the thing that I saw was that you're a serial anti-ICE agitator. And so I imagine that you must have a like CVS receipt list long of charges and all these things. So is this another, addition to that, or what's the case?
This was my first arrest ever.
Wow. Never been to prison before, never been to arrested, never been any of that.
Never had a ticket.
And and one of the other things I notice about you is that you've been a avid Whipple watcher, and you said, I think, what, since August 2025.
Yeah.
And I would imagine, even being out there, it's probably pretty lucky that you didn't get arrested within that time.
People keep People had kept asking me how I hadn't been. At one point, within a couple days of Renee Good's murder, DHS did try to detain me. I had personally pissed them off at one point. So in August, we were allowed to go into the building at first. And so the DHS agents and I developed a relationship where we at least knew each other. I knew their last names. They know my first name. They quoted my Facebook back to me last September. So I'm very familiar with them. At one point, when they were sent out to talk to us about something, I think it was to clarify where exactly we could stand. And at that point, they were telling us that we couldn't step up onto the curb on the federal side on the street of the side of the Whipple building. They changed that later. But while they were out there, I just kind of asked Edens and Burkeen, DHS officers, what happens when they tell you to point your guns at us? And they just laughed at me. And then a couple months later, Renee Good was dead. And those two personally were out on the front lines at Whipple. So I started yelling, Edens, Burkeen, quit your jobs. One of us is dead. Like, you didn't think this would happen, and now one of us is dead. Quit your jobs. Like, if it was so funny to them a few months before that they thought that they would never have their rifles turned at us, just a few months later, those very same officers were out there defending the murderers. And that's unacceptable to me. So they sold a piece of their soul during Operation Metro Surge, for sure. And the other protesters ended up learning their names as well because I was calling them out. And so even when I wasn't there, they were being called out personally, and that made them very angry. So a couple days after Renee Good's murder, they had finally had enough. And Jace, badge number 574, um, he he has always hated me. He's kicked me out of the building a couple times. He came out with them and just kind of was one of the ones that pointed, but it was Burkeen and Edens that came for me when it was before the gates had gone up. Like, they had started putting
Yeah,
up
yeah.
the cement barricades, but the gates hadn't gone up, and they hadn't told us we couldn't be on that side of the street yet. There's a public crosswalk on that
Correct.
side of the street.
Correct.
So I was standing over by the public crosswalk in front of the gate. And I had my megaphone, and I had a purple umbrella that is used to deflect pepper spray and things like that.
Irritants and yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, I was just over there yelling about how they're murderers and all these different things because I was very upset. Renee Good could have been any one of us, and for several hours we didn't know who it was. And so
Outright.
we were texting and calling everyone that we knew to make sure that the people we knew were alive. And that's absolutely traumatizing. So there was really no calming me down at that point. So they came out, and Edens and Burkeen rushed me. Jace told me to get back. I just shook my head and went, no, because he hadn't even told me where to get back to. I was by a public sidewalk. They didn't say get back behind X boundary. So I just shook my head and said no, because that's a stupid order. And so they no more chances. They just rushed me, Edens and Burkeen. And they got me pushed up against the barricade with my hands behind my back. And then one of my other friends came in and everybody surrounded and started yelling because they hadn't given any clear orders. They had no reason to be detaining me. And one of my other friends rushed in with their umbrella and kind of diverted attention, and I was able to get turned around. And then I was like, "Look, I'm trying to back up. Just give me my umbrella." So Burkeen picked up my umbrella and tried to give it to me, but Edens grabbed it and threw it on the ground. So I picked it up, and then Edens grabbed it, and we're sitting there fighting over my umbrella. So if you've seen a clip of someone at Whipple fighting over a purple umbrella and getting pepper sprayed, that was me. And eventually we were far enough back into the street that they couldn't claim we were doing anything there. So they just pepper sprayed us both. I was wearing goggles because I got pepper sprayed point blank at Brotex, and I said never again. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, but they did get my friend point blank, and it was Burkeen that pepper sprayed me and Edens that pepper sprayed him, and so that was absolutely just personal retaliation. But that's the closest I've come to being detained ever prior to this.
Thank you for that story. So obviously, it's not that you just heard about the Righteous 39 and you just decided, I'm just going to go walk in front of this church and yell. You don't hate Christians. And it turns out you actually do not only disagree with David Easterwood and his position and everything, you've also been personally attacked by agents at Whipple. And you
While
obviously,
he was the field director. This is all under his direction. So everything that happened to us in the streets, all of the pepper spray, tear gas, pepper balls, rubber bullets, flashbangs that happened to us at Whipple and in the streets during that whole time, that was under his direction.
So do you know like how high of a I would assume field director, it's probably a pretty
He's a
high.
regional field director, so this is for multiple states.
All right. Well, I didn't realize that. Okay. So that's obviously a pretty serious position there. So so it's not like he's just a random ICE agent. He's just not some innocent bystander. He's not just a former holdover or, DHS or FBI person that used to fight child molesters and now they're out there, hassling grandmothers. He's not one of those people.
No, he knows what he's doing and he absolutely has blood on his hands.
Although I would say even if he was even just the first level of you're an ICE agent and you're a pastor, how about even just if you're just an ICE agent, then fair game.
Yeah.
Okay, because you're a public servant at that point and you're doing horrible
Yeah.
shit. So
Agreed. Yeah. But
you don't get to just be an ICE field director and not hear about it. Sorry.
no. And if you're going to that congregation knowing that, because it sounds like when the Righteous 39 showed up, some people there were unaware. But the people that were there on Easter Sunday, they all know.
If you were looking at the comment section, I would say that the vast majority of Minnesota, the vast majority of anybody looking outside of this does not know, or maybe forgot or whatever. But it seems like everybody just thinks that, oh, you're just out there, as a religious bigot or something. So I'm glad that we were able to squash that. And before we get through I think we should talk. I could talk all day about Whipple and everything,
That's
about that.
okay.
And I want to continue to talk about that. I have one question, and then we're going to actually kind of talk about that day really quick.
Yeah.
But one of the most common comments that came out over and over, and this is something that you said was personally brought up to you during the situation, was if this was a mosque, would you be doing this?
Yeah. So SPPD officer, the SPPD officer that I was talking to the majority of the time asked me when I crossed the street with my speaker off without a megaphone if I would be doing this if it was a mosque. And I told him, yes, if an ICE field director was a worship leader at any place of worship, I would be there. It's not about religion. It is about the acts that they are committing and the fact that they are leading a congregation in what is supposed to be holy in whatever religion you believe in.
Yeah, and given the fact that Nick Shirley's dumbass is the reason why they did come here to go after the Somali community, I would think that if someone was doing that at a mosque, you would have a very good reason to show up and do the same thing, as well as probably other people that even attend that mosque. So let's just be honest here. So I want to make that clear. But yeah, do you want to just kind of walk us through that day? It's Easter Sunday. We've got, little kids doing their Easter egg hunts, all these things. And here you are, what did they call you? Like someone added the serial agitator hag shows up with your loudspeaker and your inflammatory, messages. Why don't you walk us through that Sunday and, how that all went down?
Sure. Yeah. By the time I got there were a few people already there in like onesies and animal costumes, and they had signs about, religion and ICE. And so I came with my speaker and my megaphone, and I had curated a city's church playlist that had incredibly little swearing, if any at all, so that it would be appropriate for children. And some of them were like Change on the Rise and things like that. Streets of Minneapolis to remind them
Mhm.
of the things that the pastor at their church had allowed to happen under him if not ordered. And so I had that playing at full volume, and it was a larger speaker. And then I was yelling things over the megaphone, not a ton. This was the first hour of a 4-hour protest. So I was just kind of waking up. I'm not a morning person. And so I was just yelling things like Jesus would have been a Palestinian, and I didn't know Jesus required papers to love
Is
people.
a Palestinian, right? I mean, really, what? Yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And then like, yeah, it doesn't I don't think Jesus required papers to love his neighbor. Things
Mm.
like that. Like I wasn't being vulgar, I wasn't swearing or anything like that. And the officer came over and told us that we couldn't use any form of amplification to and so I put my megaphone down. I didn't say anything on my megaphone after that at all. And I turned the speaker off. We were trying to ask him about a decibel level because typically there's a decibel level, like not being able to play music outside at all in St. Paul is kind of wild. And people do it all of the time,
Right.
everywhere. So that just didn't make sense to me. So we were just trying to get clarity on the law, and he didn't seem to know the law himself. He just kept telling us to look it up, and he was texting his boss, pretty clearly trying to find reasons to arrest us. And so I did. I turned the speaker on for a less than a minute after that, like after he told us that, and I was trying to find what I thought would be a reasonable volume because he just told us that it had to be a reasonable volume. I was like, well, what would pass as reasonable? But it was pretty apparent that having it on was unreasonable to them. So I turned it off completely. And I just went to using my unamplified voice. And then they came over and they told us that you couldn't, if you could be heard more than 50 feet away, that you could be arrested. And I was like, well, how are we supposed to know if we can be heard 50 feet away? And then things I've thought of since then are just like, people have different hearing. So who can hear me 50 feet away? Like, like,
Yeah, what's the reading on that? You got a tape measure or,
right. Like, okay, what if that person can hear me, but that person can't? Who are we basing this off of? So it just doesn't make sense, especially in a day and age where we do have decibel levels for things and things like that. And one of our protesters ended up looking it up and it was 65 decibels. The officer never told us that. He just kept telling us there was no decibel level. Um, and then he told us that if we if they could hear us inside the church at all, even unamplified, that we would be arrested for interrupting religious services, which I'm pretty sure emergency vehicles and cars honking their horns and maybe marching bands sometimes, who knows, can be heard outside of the church from inside. So, and I also asked him, how were we supposed to know if they could hear us inside? And he just kind of shrugged and said, I guess I wouldn't yell. Yeah. So that's literally the parameters we were given on being arrested. And he kept telling me that he already had probable cause to arrest me and threatening me with that several times. At one point, he even told me that squads were on the way. And that confused me because I was like, okay, for what? Because how many people do you need to arrest me? They already had like 6 or 8 officers there at least. So if they wanted to arrest me, they easily could have arrested me. So in my head, it didn't click that they had called for more squads to detain me. That was just wild. As I was complying with everything, I had put my megaphone down. I had turned off my speaker.
This is crazy. Okay, so I just pulled this up. 60 decibels is a normal conversation. A toilet flushing or a vacuum cleaner is 70. So that's surprisingly low. So they could basically just decide at any point they decide they don't want you there.
That's what they did, and that is exactly what they did.
Wow.
Yeah, that is exactly what they did. They just decided that they didn't want me there. There are people having, yeah, absolutely. So warning, guys, if the police don't like you talking on the street, they can arrest you for being too loud, probably.
Yeah, let me just test the volume on this before I... Give me a second. This isn't playing for anybody. Let me put it on live. Okay, so the video I have here is basically of the let's see, was that the... I'm going to do the
that
one.
one is
No,
the one
I want to do the other one first because I want to do with the officer talking. We're going to do that one and then we'll...
Telling you you can't have amplified sound. If you want to look it up, you're free to look that up.
Aren't you a cop though? You should know the decibel.
I'm telling you.
Meter.
Okay.
We have on Google.
Okay. If you want us to get our special operations unit down here, we can.
For fucking on my phone.
You can't have any amplified
Does it bang?
Okay.
Define amplified.
Right, what's the decibel level?
But we can yell, we can make noise from our
trying to
mouth.
talk and you're all
Well,
shouting
we're asking what the
questions at me.
decibel level is. That's a legitimate question.
That's
Okay.
so.
If you look up the ordinance, it
Subjective.
does not
What's that?
specify a decibel.
So
Oh,
the
there's
police
a
officer
very
can't tell us how much the
subjective-
decibel level is.
Very
You can
subjective
have your
rule.
music at a reasonable level.
So what is it?
So
Get on
define
an
reasonable.
amplified speaker
What?
and you're broadcasting through a bullhorn, something like that, that's going to be illegal.
What?
Okay?
We will look it up, but define the decibel level, please. If you can't give us the decibel level,
that
that's
Derek
pretty insane
Bart?
as the police officer.
I know.
That's your opinion.
No, okay, so what's the decibel level? Because
There's
subjective.
no decibel
So
level.
because subjective
Look it
is
up.
subjective.
Look it up. Look
So
it
we think this is reasonable, sir.
up.
How you gonna tell us what?
All right, sir, we think this is reasonable.
Anything I say is not going to make you happy.
Well, you're not even giving us actual answers because you're not giving us a decibel level. Reasonable is subjective.
Amplified sound.
What is the amplified sound?
Okay?
Goes both
you
ways.
cannot talk through a loudspeaker.
Anywhere in St. Paul?
You said that
Where is this for? Because in St. Paul you can.
Penetrating, especially if you're penetrating their right to worship.
Airspace.
This is public property, is it not?
Your smoke can't go in their yard.
This is public property, right?
Click on the decimal.
Okay.
Click on the decimal.
If you're going to be out
So in
here,
St. Paul we can't use megaphones. Sure, in St. Paul we can't use megaphones, and they won't define what a subjective level is,
letting you know.
and there is no decibel level they will give us. So here's City's Church. They're big mad.
Amplified device.
But it's not loud though. It's loud.
It's not a decibel
Yeah,
level, ma'am.
yes it is. Yes it is. I do it in plan.
You said so,
Okay, you did not look it up because if
She
you
did,
look up the
dumbass.
city
She
ordinance-
did.
Okay, look, I'm letting you know.
Okay, Grandpa.
Letting you know.
Okay, Grandpa. Have a nice day.
50 feet. Okay, that's number one.
We're not
Okay.
ever flying.
literally
This is
5
coming from
This is not a megaphone.
our
This
attorney.
is,
Okay?
this is not a megaphone. That's not a
You're
megaphone.
gonna listen to me.
Jesus would have loved his neighbor.
Is that your speaker then?
Our parents should be embarrassed.
yeah.
We're
Okay.
worshiping
Second of
pedophiles.
all, Minnesota State Statute 609.21. A person is guilty of a crime if they intentionally disrupt,
Do we get citation?
interrupt a religious meeting or assembly.
What? We're not in a church.
If protesters deliberately use a bullhorn aimed
Just
at
like
a
Planned
church,
Parenthood.
Okay, so we can stand over there without using a bullhorn, and we can yell from there.
okay?
Right here.
But you asked me before about the decibel, okay?
St. Paul
You
City
told us about the
Ordinance
decibel. You're the one about the
293.07.
My commander said
65 decibels.
you will be cited or arrested if you're in violation of the law.
That's okay,
Okay?
we'll fight
I'm
it.
putting you on fair notice.
And when we are in coherent or in compliance with the law.
Look, if
And
it were
you
up
come
to me,
over
I
here.
would say you're already in violation of the law.
Yeah, we know that.
Oh yeah, we absolutely.
We've seen you guys crack skulls. I was at Rose Avenue.
Because of the statute reads 609.21. Read it. You're in violation already.
All right, well, we'll meet you over there.
So we're giving you grace
Oh, okay. You're giving us grace on our protesting and free speech rights.
You are 100%.
We're not blocking the sidewalk. We're going to stand in front of it, sir. Who would Jesus deport? Did it require paperwork to be loved by him?
Oh, he's too loud. Oh, he's coming back. I think he's measuring. Guys, he's coming back, so.
This is what creates PTSD, guys.
We're not allowed. Oh, I think he's.
So were you even using you were just using the music at that point, right? Because I don't hear you using actually the talking through the speaker. So
He's measuring.
that's like the worst thing you've done at this point, right?
I'm going to show you the law. No decibels.
What?
No, there isn't. I'm going to show you the law right here.
Is that
Okay?
That's a text message.
I'm going to show you the law. You can look it up if you want, but this is
We
the
did
law.
look it up. It's 65 decibels.
It's not decibels, okay? It's 50 feet.
You are 50 feet.
It's 50 feet. If you can be heard from 50 feet away, you're in violation of the law. The width of this road is
I love
almost
that.
50 feet. Okay?
So that's a public sidewalk over there, right?
It is a public
Aye.
sidewalk.
All right, thank you. We're going to cross the street to the sidewalk since we can't project more than 50 feet, and we're not going to use megaphones, and we're not going to stand on the sidewalk because we're not going to block the sidewalk. City's church protection. There's literally as many cops as there are protesters. This is why we don't have health care and everything, guys, because we pay for a police state. And they're here to protect David Easterwood, who was in charge when Renee Good was murdered, and when
Here they come.
they're detaining.
Oh, I was actually going to play the other video. I didn't realize that was just the end of it. That's good.
You get the whole picture there.
Oh my
They're
God.
such
Okay, let's.
Dicks. It just gives me high blood pressure.
My God, that was something.
There is no statute. There is no actual measurement. Proceeds to read you the statute. Cops just do. This is exactly how everyone should talk to cops. Is I'm calling your bullshit because they just say stuff and do stuff and tell you to do stuff just to see if you'll do it. And way more often than not, that's not a thing. You can't tell me to do that. And then, yeah, you saw they just came for you. Only you. But it's off board. It drives me crazy.
Yeah. So let's say of all things, the absolute worst thing you did was play a speaker outside.
Yeah, I was realizing watching that. I was like, okay, I guess I played it for more than like a minute.
I think that's the
maybe
only
a
thing.
couple songs after they told us that, and I adjusted the volume quite a bit. Like you can hear us very clearly.
It did go lower, actually.
Yeah, you
towards
can
the
hear
end
us
there.
quite clearly, and we were standing right next to the speaker.
Yeah.
So that should tell you how not loud the speaker actually was.
So I think according to the comment sections, they're saying that is like, worth federal charges or some shit.
Yeah.
Like people are like going ham over you. It is red meat to the dogs, we'll just say. But anyways, yeah, I'm just trying to think. So obviously you were taken in. This is your first time being incarcerated. Obviously it was wrongfully incarcerated because you got no fucking charges. So what was that situation like for you, just in general, and how foolish did this all seem in the end?
It seemed foolish from the very beginning. The sergeant, as he was putting me in there, you can see in other videos from people that he was turning around smiling. He was very happy to be having me arrested. And he was explaining why I was being arrested to the officers who had been called in to arrest me. And the only thing I said the entire time I was in the police car was, as he was explaining to them what had happened, he kept bringing up my speaker. And at the point he was talking about it at, because he was saying that I brought it across the street, I just kept going, which was off. And then I was silent the whole rest of the way there. Because I didn't need to talk to him and they didn't try to talk to me. And when we got there, the women who received me at Ramsey County Sheriff's Department looked at the charges, looked at them, and went, "What are these?" Right. And then they read them again and they went, "Are these city ordinances?" Yeah, like,
Oh.
so immediately the people taking me in at Ramsey County showed that they thought it was bullshit, honestly. But I had already been arrested and I was being brought into jail. So they took me in and then they were patting me down and they were like, "Wow, they really didn't search you very well." And they pulled stuff out of my pockets. I had like a Baby Bell cheese somebody had given me and like my friend's car keys. Thankfully, she had her spare on her, but still in my pockets because, yeah, they had taken my vapes out and been like, "Okay, we're good." And I hadn't done anything wrong. And I was very confident of that. So I did tell, she was like, why did they bring you in? And I just kind of explained it. And I was like, I mean, I'm happy to be here. Not happy to be here, but if for anything, this is insane. And she was like, yeah, so they booked me in and, they took my fingerprints and they searched me and gave me lunch and then took me and put me in a cell. And
Could you eat your lunch? Or are you unable to eat it?
good question. Yeah, I'm a vegetarian and I'm lactose intolerant, which I didn't bother even telling them because they wouldn't have cared. They wouldn't have done anything about it or done anything differently, probably. So, and I knew it was only going to be for one day. So I was just like, it's whatever. I'll eat the things I can eat out of it. And so, yeah, I ate fruit and bread pretty much. There was one cookie involved.
So what time did you get arrested?
8:45 maybe. I don't know 100%. I know that I was in there by 9:00.
So over 24 hours.
Yeah.
Not just overnight. It was we're talking literally over a day you spent there.
Yeah.
For a effing foolish reason. But yeah, anyways, I'm just trying to think. I don't think I have any other questions about that, but obviously, it goes without saying. Obviously, you understand that the impact of your false arrests on you probably is peanuts compared to what happens to the people that are detained at Whipple. So obviously the reason why you have probably come to any sort of prominence in this community is because of your Whipple watching and activities. And I know yours. Have you been as long or?
I started at Whipple, I think in like October, November, so not
Okay.
as long.
Okay.
But
pretty long before
pretty
Whipple
long.
Watch was even a thing.
Well, because
Like 4
because
hours, yeah.
because let's just be honest. I was certainly I was watching all of you do your thing or through 50501, all that stuff. I've got young kids. It's just hard to get out.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where I'm like, I've been doing my activism from, living vicariously through all the, people doing their stuff. So I appreciate it, but I've been watching 50501 and, them do their work as far as Whipple watching and then, Nick Benson following the flights and, so all of these things around our city seem to connect. And so obviously, like I said, your detainment seems like peanuts compared to some of the things that you've seen at Whipple. Between either of you, and I'll just like start with you and then, if you got any examples as well. Are there any things that stick in your mind as like one of maybe the most egregious things that you've kind of seen in the past, few months as far as like stories you've heard? And I would say specifically, let's focus not just on protesters, but more on the affected, communities that
Right.
did not choose to walk there and protest, but the people
Right.
that are like just living their life and getting swept out. Do you have any examples that just kind of come to mind of like?
Yeah. I mean, I've been at Whipple doing Whipple Watch, but I also spent a lot of time doing rapid response throughout Operation Metro Surge and spent a lot of time in the streets. And so I was on scene when a Somali man who had shown the cops shown ICE his passport card was detained, and they knew they had a citizen in their vehicle and they had to release him 24 hours later, but it was cold and I'm sure they probably kept his cell phone. They kept most people's cell phones. And so if it wasn't for Haven Watch being out there, he would have been alone. And that's a pretty common occurrence. Hanging out at Whipple, I remember seeing someone get released and then going to talk to my friend who runs a van at Whipple, where she is an EMT and she helps take care of people after they're released.
What's her name again?
Care Bear
Thank
Hartshire.
you.
Yeah, she's amazing.
I follow her as well. Yeah.
We've been friends since before the surge, thankfully. And she's amazing. And so she had taken this guy into her van when I went to go talk to her. And I looked over because he was like putting on bracelets and stuff. And I was like, were you the one that was just released? And he was like, yeah. And he was actually in really good spirits because he was just like, but I'm a citizen. They had to let me go. And at least they weren't kidnapping other people. And it's just like the fact that even vulnerable people that are being detained and released from Whipple are coming out of there going, at least they took me and they weren't supposed to. So I'm getting out. But things I've heard at Whipple are just like people having to beg for water, people being locked in bathrooms like women and children with adult men. And I don't have as many stories from the vulnerable people themselves because Haven Watch takes very good care of them. And they don't need everybody surrounding them and trying to ask them questions when they come out.
Yeah, I agree.
But if we can base anything off of how they treat protesters, which they know they're going to be getting out a lot sooner, and they know that there's attention on them, and they know that most of these people, they're not even charging with anything. I've heard, like, if we can judge how they're probably treating the immigrants based on that, our protesters have, as they're being detained, had their joints purposely stomped on. They're taken into Whipple and they are shamed and yelled at. So it's not just a physical arrest, it's not just detainment.
It's like a psychological.
Yes, 100%. There was a non-binary person or trans person, someone who of a queer identity, and they kept calling them it. And they just dehumanize people as much as possible. And those are the white protesters that are being taken in. And we already know that the people that they're detaining for the surge, and beyond that for immigration in general, they've dehumanized far beyond what they've done to the protesters.
I've got one thing I want to say, and then I want to go to you. I do remember it's Care Bear, right? Okay, yeah. So there was a video that kind of went, I saw recently of someone just interviewing her. I don't know if that was you or someone else, but just like sitting in her van talking to her, and she was talking about her experiences. And she said something about like there was a person who came out and he was looking them over for injuries and basically said like, hey, you need to go to the hospital right now. And because of that, that person actually avoided amputation of I think their legs or something, or their feet because of the leg irons that they were in. And they were so injured because of it. So thankfully, people like, yourself, Haven Watch, Care Bear, all these people, are out there. So
Actually, I just want to jump in again. I remembered another story real quick that as you were saying that, there was a woman who, when she was detained, they kneeled on her so aggressively that they had to immediately take her to the hospital, and she had to have surgery to fix whatever they had done internally to her. And then she spent, I think, 5 days in the hospital and 4 more days in Whipple or something like that. So they, after injuring her to the point she needed surgery, just upon detaining her, took her right back to Whipple as she was healing up.
Jesus. These are like potentially life-ruining actions. Even just an arrest, someone can lose their job, they can't go pick up their kids, whatever, etc. But an injury, right? You have the medical debt, you can't make it to your job, maybe you're the only breadwinner. It's performative cruelty. It's the worst thing they can think of just because they're mad and because they want to in the moment. And yeah, they do horrible shit to us. You know who you should talk to is people who have been detained inside Whipple. Because I got arrested and I got taken downtown. It was at the
luckily, I would admit.
Yeah. And someone too that I talked to after that, it was a 50-51 guy who's like, did they take you downtown? I was like, yeah. He's like, okay, those are actually like, because there are other people looking, but it sounds like when you get detained by Federal Protective Service, which they were there all the time, they're the ones being really super brutal with ICE. You go in there and apparently you can see a lot of the way that they're keeping people that weren't just detained, that are like, they're there and they're just,
In Whipple, it sounds like there's sections, from what I've heard from people, it sounds like they take you in and there's a section for white people and non-white people, and like a section for, protesters and people detained on ICE. And like that stuff makes sense, but like separating like white people and not white people and stuff like that absolutely is insane. And people, even protesters, like the white ones we knew immediately the white ones get released a lot faster than anyone of color.
And even they aren't getting basic needs stuff.
No.
Did you have any more examples? I have one. I want you to go first though before.
Oh no, I've been lucky. I haven't had to witness a lot of firsthand brutality of immigrants. They're pretty brutal with us. A couple weeks ago, there was the blockade at Whipple, and I pulled up right as the sheriffs were just smashing people down.
That was the car parade.
No, that was March 1st.
Yeah, it was March 1st.
The traffic jam was shortly after that. March 1st was when we had two separate actions. One was a blockade on one side of the building, and then there was a separate like peaceful march on the other side, and they still came and detained people on that side.
That was after the dildo blitz one,
That
right?
was after,
Yeah, okay, that's
yeah.
what I thought. Because that was in, I
Yeah.
think, February, I believe.
That was
okay.
February 7th. I
Sounds
remember
good.
because I got arrested that day.
I narrowly escaped. They
Yeah.
were literally pointing. They had come on. The state conservation officers had come onto the sidewalks behind the barriers, and they were pushing people back. And I could see them pointing because you always know who they're going to arrest based on like they point and talk about it. So they were pointing, and then one points, the girl with the bullhorn. And
Yeah.
so I fucked off.
And I definitely was trying to fuck off too. Definitely. They were like,
oh no, they literally were like, no, that
Yeah.
one. And so I was like, all right, well, I'm far enough back that I can just disappear. I know other people were not that lucky. It's not that
For
other
sure.
people were not trying.
I could have run. But they grab, I've seen them be brutal with us. They're pretty brutal. They were pretty rough with me when they grabbed me. Started out pretty rough, and then I was like, oh, okay, Jesus, okay, I'm coming. And they're just like pulling as if I'm resisting. I think that's the time that a lot of people maybe get their feet get out from under them and they fall down. And then when that happens, then they're going to like kick you. They're going to smash your face into the ground. The guy that I was actually at the protest with, he was arrested too that day, the day of the dildoing, and he's like in his 60s. The dildoing. That's really the best way to put it.
It is.
But he's like in his 60s. And I didn't see this happen, but he was right next to me. And they took him down. He was like, we couldn't hear him because we had our earplugs in because they have LRADs.
Yeah,
So we're not trying to, Yeah. So they like messed him up, but they grabbed me. They're like, oh. And then, but for some reason, like sheriffs are just kind of like cool to me, which is annoying. And this is a bad take. Okay. I know that this is a bad take, but I'm not tackleable. What? I'm not enough of a threat that you're like, come here. And then I was like, no, I'm coming. He's like, oh, okay. And then I got some loose, whatever. And then they took me downtown and they processed me right away. And they're just like, okay, here you go. Here's your citation. So it's annoying because it's this weird blend of like daily trauma. Let's see how much violence I can witness. And then I'm going to go and try and help with it. And then not really a lot of violence towards me. And again, I realize that this is a bad opinion. Grateful that it's not happening to me. But it's a little bit of a survivor's guilt, maybe a little bit.
Yeah,
Because I have black belts. I can slam me to the ground. Don't take other people down. I can do it.
Yeah. I think that's just, recognizing your privilege. And
Yeah.
So, and it's, and so obviously if people don't mention those things, it's like people don't understand how ingrained these things go and how malicious some of these things go towards certain people, and other people are able to just like walk freely. And obviously just even the difference between men and women and how I could walk through the world, and then then you add race, all that shit to it.
Yep.
Yeah.
They're brutal to women, like ICE agents in the field, and you can see that in the footage. I encourage anyone, as much as you can, watch. It's rough. Have a hug after, take a nap after, and a beer or whatever. But like, watch some footage of the way that sheriffs too, not even just ICE, but they come in so hot and they come in so mad, and it's crazy to see, because you're like, why are you doing this to people in the world? If you don't grow up seeing that, it's crazy, and it's weird every time. And I think it should be weird and alarming every time. But
well, and if my comments, and sorry for saying it, but most of the people just call me retarded, but when you look at a woman who would be speaking out doing the same thing, it's like misogynistic, like rape, murder, horrible fantasies. Like, it's just wild shit that people are saying. So obviously I even understand the fact that I could speak out and not be as harmed, by it. So it's a really weird world that we live in. One last thing I was thinking of was, there is one, I think it's Haven Watch is dealing with this person, right? I believe they're helping him right now. Well, obviously I think some, they went from just physically showing up and helping people right at the gate to now like, hey, checking in with these people and and seeing what long-term things are happening. There was one situation that I had heard of where basically the person, they got detained, and then I think they were held for about 30 days or something. Obviously, I don't know where they went in that time. God
Right.
knows that's, I'm sure another awful just story on its own. But the person was out for 30-ish days or something. And then when they get back, their car had been repossessed. Their house was, they were like evicted from their apartment or something, basically. And so because of the fact that they weren't there, their landlord just paid someone to just throw their shit away. So this person not only lost their car, I think they lost their job as well because they weren't showing up and nobody knew, but they literally lost every single possession to their, being or whatever. So yeah, it just seems like, and obviously they were released at the end. So they're allowed to be here. So is that just a big whoopsies, So obviously we're not trying to sit here and be like, oh my God, your incarceration was the worst thing to ever happen.
No.
This is not the point of this podcast and not the point of any of this. But obviously it's to shine a light on the larger mistreatment that is happening under the actual orders of David Easterwood.
I just want to kind of throw in to bounce off of what you were just saying. Just people not knowing where people go. I heard about from a teacher, because we've had a lot of teachers come out to protest with us. They're missing their babies, and their
They're
babies are missing
stressed.
their parents, their families. Their teachers on their off time are delivering meals to their students who can't leave the house. So on top of teaching and whatever else they do. So the teachers have been out there. And I heard from one teacher about how they had no idea where this little girl and her family had gone until another one of her students was detained, taken to Dilley. They saw them there, and then that family was released.
Jesus.
But the family that they had no idea where they were for a month. For a month, they had no idea where this little girl and her family
I'd
had
heard
gone.
about that one, yeah.
Yeah.
A family in my martial arts school actually told me about that. That a mom mentioned to me that they don't know where a couple of the students are, and it's really stressful for the kids, and it's really stressful for the teachers. Teachers are stressed right now. They're getting off their shifts and they're putting on their vest to go stand outside the school to make sure that no one takes the babies.
100%.
Yeah.
And deliver food
Yep.
and do whatever else they can do.
Yeah,
Bless
it's
these teachers.
I just remember following Sabocat during the height of all this was just like, and to me, I think at one point there was probably still like the winter break happening there, so there was some time when people are off.
Mhm.
So there was a little bit more time to focus on it. But I'm like watching that, and then you're like, you're still a fucking teacher right now. You're still running a classroom. You're still doing all this goddamn stuff right now. I'm just like, I think everybody's been through a lot of collective trauma, recently. And I don't think there's any need to, put a word out for who's seen the most. But I'm like, holy fuck, just to see what some of these people are going through, and they're still able to be positive, move forward, and so shout out Sabocat, shout out to all the other teachers that are doing this in not in public and just living through this day to day. It's affecting all of us. So yeah, I'm trying to think here. I do got to kind of wrap this up here, but I think that was just a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today. I guess and yeah, one last point I do want to make. And so I know everybody just thinks of you, for example, as you're just labeled as the serial anti-ICE agitator. I don't think people realize that you're also participating in mutual aid. You're also rapid responding. You're also, bringing food to people at some point. I don't know what you're currently doing right now.
We do try to keep the people who bring people food and the people who
separate.
are out
Rapid
actively
responders,
doing things.
yeah, separate.
Because they know us from
Right.
people in there.
Yeah.
So to protect people, I will pack food, but I will not take food to people.
So
or anything like that. But,
I'm not trying to
100%,
toot your horn there or whatever, but obviously there's more than just
100%.
because I think a lot of people see this and they go, why don't you do something productive? Like, you think you're doing something just by yelling at people, like
Keyboard warriors is what we call them.
Yeah.
There's every opinion for everything that we do. There's half the people are like, that's not enough. You should be armed. And then the other half are like, oh, that's a lot, and you shouldn't be using swears. And it's like, all right, guys, something's got to happen. We're doing our best. Well, if you have a great idea, why don't you come and help us?
Someone at Whipple, a protester, told me that people like me, because I do swear and stuff, are the reason that Renee and Alec got shot.
Guess what? Swearing is protected speech,
Right.
motherfuckers.
And then at Chanhassen, at a raid, me and one of my other friends, the one that came in with the umbrella when they tried to detain me at Whipple, we were physically assaulted by protesters on our side because they didn't like what we were saying to the feds, who in negative degree weather had someone trapped up in the rafters. So like, the right doesn't have to come for us. We'll eat ourselves if we don't figure out how to just let each other be.
And use some perspective.
Sorry,
some
didn't mean to
context.
just-
No, that
that's
was very
fair.
good. That was very good. You've surely met the Bible guy there before, right?
God. Oh, yes.
Have you talked to him actually
No,
and
because
engaged
every
him?
time he comes next to me, I'm like, get the fuck away from me.
I talked to him, and I wonder if I still have the video. I should check on my phone and see if I still have it. It was interesting, and basically the conversation I got from him was that basically he's like, yeah, I used to live here, so I know the state well, and I moved away. I'm from Montana, but he decided, and people are sending food, they're doing all these things, and this guy decided, I'm going to drop a bunch of money and buy thousands of Bibles to show up and just hand them to people, no context and nothing. I'm just going to just hand out Bibles or whatever. And I'm not political, I'm just here to
That's just
so I talked to him, and basically what he said to me is that he was like, well, it was like, these people are coming here and they're saying these awful things, and I was here the other day, and someone was swearing on a blowhorn, and I saw this woman crying, so I went and I prayed with her. Basically, I was like, hey buddy, I get it, like words can be tough for people, and but I said, how about this? I'm curious, what are your thoughts on the people on the other side and the actions that they're doing? Oh, I'm not in politics, I'm not here to
Pretty fucking convenient, dude.
But he said that we need to see eye to eye with them,
No.
and we need to understand that they're people too. And so, and then when I tried to do that, it was just, oh, well, most people aren't actually here to have this conversation, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'm trying to have this conversation with you.
Right.
And he was actively trying to be like, oh, this people don't act like blah, 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 and trying to act as if I was not going to give him the space to say what he said. And he just tried to get out.
Yeah.
So I was like, microphone in your face, tell me about it. I'm not into politics.
Yeah, tell me how you're actually helping right now.
He goes, I went to, I don't know what protest it was. I was in a protest. It was probably, it was after, I think it was after Alex Preddy. So it was probably one of those bigger, downtown protests.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to one of those protests, and there are all these people protesting, and there's a homeless person sitting there, like we should just, because the fact that there is a homeless person that is not being helped by everybody at that purpose. So I went over there and I prayed with them, and I gave them a cookie and a Bible.
People who are in those anti-ICE protests and everything are also the people out there feeding people and taking care of homeless encampments. The same people who were organizing against ICE also organize to go out and make sure that homeless camps don't get swept under like people like Mayor Jacob Frey,
Yeah. Who has a lot to say, but what's going on? Our cops are helping, and the sheriffs are helping. You don't even see a suspicious patrol anymore without a cop in it now. It's the weirdest fucking shit in the world.
I had a situation in Woodbury the other day where I was driving with my kids at night or whatever, and all of a sudden a pack, like two, it was like a F-150 unmarked and then a Explorer unmarked, both made this really super evasive maneuver, cut off everybody in traffic, and then just like shot across somewhere, pulled this car over, and within 10 seconds that person was ripped out of the car and they were in handcuffs. They were brown, maybe Somali, something like that. So someone who is of color. So I'm like with my kids, I had to go somewhere, but I was like, I need to just stop and like at least take a picture. I reported it to, the locals and, had to go, but it was just like, and then after I was sitting there for a couple minutes, finally Woodbury PD shows up and they were talking with them. And I'm like, all the people out there, I mean, maybe they were locals, but the fact that there was two of them in a pack driving together and then immediately like 3 to 4 people from each car not wearing any uniform, just wearing a black police vest. And I'm like, I'm pretty fucking sure. And so obviously then our town police show up and they're just talking to them like, yeah, what's up? No big deal.
Yeah, that's definitely the vibe at Whipple, by the way. You remember when they brought National Guard in and Wallace was like, this is for us, they're for us. He made a specific point to be like, no, National Guard is here for you guys resisting ICE. And they spent about half an hour handing out PR donuts.
Yeah.
And then
the last 2 days they were there in SWAT gear.
Yeah, they just hung out pretty quickly, made their way behind the fences to hang out with ICE. And then it was the most natural relationship in the world.
Are they still deployed?
No.
Okay. Do you know when that ended?
We see military stuff, and though, like at No Kings, they had an LRAD set up, and they had like
but that's
at least have that.
That at least was a larger event, so we could excuse that as much as it's stupid and unnecessary.
We haven't seen them in 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, I haven't seen
2 or 3 weeks. Maybe the last I heard was they were around. They were in SWAT gear for like 2 days, and then they were gone.
Yeah, so the last time I was there, they were in SWAT gear, and it was a big Vets for Peace day, and we'll talk about that separately. But yeah, anyways, so yeah, crazy situation. But anyways, I'm trying to think. I just want to say, yeah, thankfully, if they are not deployed anymore, thank fucking God, because number one, tax dollars. Absurd. Fucking absurd.
And the damage their vehicles do to the street.
Yeah, we were just talking about that. I got a flat tire.
So many people responding to things, and even just like driving around, have gotten flat tires from the potholes this year and stuff.
They're ripped up.
The streets are so bad from the
in
vehicles.
That area.
In Minneapolis, yes.
In Minneapolis in general, like the streets are ripped up from ICE specific, like really bad this
North
year.
Lindale is not. It's more hole than road.
Yeah, it's very bad. But like there are a lot of potholes and just the pressure on roads from transporting those vehicles everywhere.
Yep, the roads are fucked up. They're driving dangerously. They just go shooting down Lindale just way too fast. 3, 4, 5 of them cutting people off.
You're talking ICE.
I'm talking ICE.
Yeah. But National Guard, they're gone.
Well, the point I was going to say was for National Guard, obviously they're not ICE agents. They're not DHS. We understand that these are just our fellow neighbors and all these stuff. So we all get that, know. The fact that these people, they're not just sitting there full-time employees like sitting at a base. No, these are people that work jobs. They have families, and they are basically taken away from their, maybe they didn't have to travel to get here and they could stay at home or something if they're lucky, but some people maybe didn't. And so they're ripped away from their families. Their jobs are now being affected. Their families are being affected. Anybody who is a parent of young kids would be like pretty pissed if their significant other had to leave, especially for such a dumb fucking reason. And all I ever saw them do at Whipple is just sit there and inhale diesel fumes as they idle in their trucks and probably just sit there and watch YouTube videos. Yeah. So, I mean, let's just be honest. No shame on them. That's like, we understand.
What else are you going to do?
You're just following orders and that's its own thing. But thank God that has finally ended. So I'm glad to hear that. The last thing I would say, I appreciate you coming on here. Where can we find you? Either, socials or whatever.
I am EmilyPhillips, Redwitch, REDW TCH 333. If you look me up on Instagram or TikTok, I believe as well.
I am nowhere and no one.
Awesome.
If you want to hang out, come to Whipple on a Wednesday morning or a Saturday afternoon. And that's on purpose, and I love it. It's great.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
It's
We
great.
appreciate it. And thanks for coming, moral support, as well as your excellent addition to the conversation, because obviously you've been a part of this as well. Yeah. And then for myself, I just do political posting just under at DissentDad. What is it? Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. And, as far as what I'm doing here, this is all just out of my own money, my own production, all this stuff. So if you're looking to support that, I will put some links in there, but Venmo at DissentDad, or also buy me a coffee at DissentDad. Appreciate you coming in here today.
Sorry. I also have a Patreon. You can find it on my Instagram if anybody wants to support there, because this takes a lot of time and energy.
Yes.
to throw that in there, so
Yeah.
doing that.
And I will add all the links for you and not you. And we are good to go. But yeah, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And have a
Yeah.
great evening.
Thank you. Appreciate it.